Hey everybody, Johnny5 Alive here, and welcome to a video series where I showcase what I found to be the best in slot min-max build for one of the 12 Midnight Suns heroes. I will also give a quick review of all the hero abilities to show what other potential fun build options the hero may have, or reveal the thought process that ultimately led me to the one and only best choice to min-max said hero. Once we have given an overview of the hero, I will give a tier list rating in direct comparison to the other 12 heroes. We'll also mention what battle items and heroes synergize best with this build. This is a one of 12 part series. If you end up finding this video informative or helpful in any ways, please check the video description for a full playlist of my series for Midnight Suns, and also don't forget to like and subscribe. So let's get into today's hero. Today's hero is none other than Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. Spider-Man is one of the most unique heroes in the entire roster of Midnight Suns because he is really the only hero that specializes in environmental attacks. Considering every single map in the game has environmental objects that most characters and most parties cannot take advantage of, this definitely brings the value of Spider-Man to a whole new level through his ability to make use of all those destructible objects on each and every battlefield, and he often does it for free. Spider-Man can really feel like you are getting 2 turns for the price of 1. Not only are you utilizing your 3 card plays per turn, but you're also getting to utilize tossing obstacles into enemies over and over and over again, sometimes until the battlefield is empty. But the fun doesn't end there. Much like Magic or Ileana, Spider-Man also plays as sort of a support character through his ability to crowd control enemies by knocking them into generators to stun them, knocking them off the map entirely, knocking them into allies for extra free card draws, and also his ability to bind enemies with Thwip, forcing them to miss a turn. Spider-Man has a ton of potential and is one of the funnest characters in the game to play, hands down, simply because he gets to do so many more actions in a single turn than any other hero in the game, and it is a ton of fun. In my build guide here today, we're going to take him one step further and show you guys how to turn Spider-Man into a powerhouse DPS while also transforming him into a one-of-a-kind mark target support hero on top of everything he's already doing so well. So buckle up, this is going to be a fun one, ladies and gentlemen. Talking about his tier list rating in comparison to the other heroes on the roster, for all the reasons I mentioned about Spider-Man having almost 2 turns worth of actions, in the early and mid game, Spider-Man is one of the few heroes who can actually clear the entire map of enemies in 1 turn on Ultimate 3 difficulty, and I did it many times in the process of the campaign. This makes him an absolute S tier character for sure. Once he is modded, he only becomes stronger, so he stays in the S tier for me. I originally placed modded Blade and Wanda above Spider-Man in the S tier, but my new and improved build for Spider-Man, I believe he outperforms both Blade and Wanda in every aspect. So I think my new build that we're going to showcase here in today's video makes Spider-Man the second best hero in the game next to Iron Man without a doubt. So let's take a closer look at my build and recommendations for Spider-Man. Let's kick things off with my hero profile. My Spider-Man in the top right hand corner is level 37 champion level with a friendship level of level 14. He's been on 38 missions with the Hunter, and you guys can see he's KO'd 310 enemies. My most played attack on him is his quick kick, and I've gotten a good use out of all of his abilities other than special delivery, but everything has seen some use throughout the campaign of the game and throughout my testing of builds that ultimately led to the build that I'm using now. I definitely got use out of almost all of his abilities, as his kit is really, really good. There's a lot of different ways you can go with Spider-Man. I found something that's truly unique that I don't think anyone else has thought of yet, and I'm super excited to showcase that here today. So let's get into that. Let's start off by looking at his passive ability. When Spider-Man uses an environmental attack, there's a 15% chance to refund the heroism cost. That is huge. The first environmental attack Spider-Man uses each encounter costs nothing. That is also huge. So I do hope to see an epic and even legendary version of this, as the 15% chance to refund the heroism is really quite low. I definitely would love to see this get upgraded to 30% and even 50% with epic and legendary if they decide to go that route with the DLC in the future. But at the very least, you're always going to get value out of the first environmental attack for each mission, which will cost 0. I also hope to see this get upgraded to each turn. But at the end of the day, with the build you'll see here, pretty much you're going to go on an environmental killing spree regardless, and he'll get to do multiple attacks and environmental usage for free. So his passive will quickly become irrelevant based off the build that we're going with. With that said, if you ever do find a situation where you're going to throw a box at an enemy or knock down a lamp or do whatever, obviously use Spider-Man because of that 15% chance to refund the heroism. He should always be the one doing the destructibles on the mission. Okay, let's talk about his hero stats in the bottom right hand corner here. His health, his offense are all going to scale well with his champion level, but I want to talk about the stats that I highly recommend for him, starting with his power. Power caps at 25% and it increases the size of his area abilities. This is really important for him, especially my build, because a lot of his heavy hitter stuff is going to be from his AoE attacks. The second most important one that you want to upgrade on him is his strength. This caps out at 50%. I'm currently only at 35 out of 50%, so I have 15% more to go. I think that's 3 more training yard sessions, but he does have a couple attacks that we will be using the knockback distance on that are important, but because there's other heroes on the roster that need the strength much more, he was lower in priority than the other heroes, but I still highly recommend upgrading his strength. And last but not least, getting that crit chance and crit damage up is always going to be nice. Crit chance caps at 50%, crit damage caps at 75%, and this is going to increase the chance of a massive crit damage card pulling in your hand, and the build that I'm using also has a good amount of damage. So this will just make a already powerful Spider-Man even more powerful. But there are other characters that specialize purely in damage, and I have decided to focus on them first, but I still want to work on this for my Spider-Man here. So I got some work to do there. So let's talk about my personal build for Spider-Man and what makes it very unique. Starting off with the quick kick. It's a knockback, it's a quick attack, and if the target has been damaged, it does bonus damage. By default, this card, as you can see on the top left corner, it actually doesn't do damage. The only damage that will be affected is the knockback, what they're knocked back into. Or if they've already been damaged, then this card will then do damage. But it's rare that you'll ever get the knock-on effect of that extra bonus 150 damage, which is based off his offense. So the higher level he goes, the higher that bonus will be. So the way I use this is just to knock back a minion into something. Because it kills them, you get the card play refunded, and the mod that I'm using on KO, draw a Spider-Man card. This is going to help you cycle through your Spider-Man cards. The way you want to use quick is I highly recommend using your first move to move Spider-Man into a position where he can knock back the enemy into an ally with his quick kick, which will then cause the effect of knocking back an enemy into an ally to draw an additional card. So now this card will draw a Spider-Man card and an additional card because you knocked them into an ally, and there's a 33% chance that that additional card will be a Spider-Man card. This card is effectively a draw 2 card quick kick because you can afford to spend your moves to reposition him, because as we'll go through his deck, there's a lot of cards in his deck that will generate more moves. So we don't really have to worry about spending our moves on Spider-Man, which is absolutely fantastic. You only need to run one of these in your deck, and we don't really have room for a second, and you'll see why as we go through. One thing I do recommend with that quick kick is running a hunter who runs Call to Arms, which is a free card with draw last attack played, as well as Inspire, which is a free card that draws last attack played. There's a good chance you will draw one of these by knocking them into your ally, or you might just have one of these in your hand at the start of a mission. That will enable you to redraw the last attack played, which was your quick kick, allowing you to again build that momentum fishing for more Spider-Man cards. One of the cards we're fishing for is Opportunist. The next 2 environmental attacks are 0 heroism, much like his passive, and that will stack it to 3 because you start the mission with 1, and they will do bonus damage damage, and it will give you +2 moves, which will enable you to reposition your quick kicks yet again. So absolutely amazing. We modify this to be free, and there's a good chance as you're fishing, you'll come across this card, and you'll probably even see it in some of the footage that I'm playing in the background here. I've often played 2, 3, 4 opportunists in a singular turn with Spider-Man because the card generation is so great. I end up coming across this quite often, meaning you can, the next 4, 6, 8, 10 environmental attacks are all free, and they're doing +80 damage, +80 damage, +80 damage. Eventually, the environmental attacks are so powerful, they'll just KO anything that you use them on. It's really quite insane, and then you'll get so many moves that you'll never have to worry about using moves, which is just amazing. So Opportunist is an amazing card. I absolutely love this card. I've tried running 2, and it's overkill. It's just too much. I'm coming across this card way too often. You just don't need 2 in your deck. 1 is definitely sufficient. Next up, we have our Spider Sense. I wasn't originally using this card, but I found once you modify it to do +2 heroism, and you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, it says +4. We've increased that from 2 to 4 by modding it with +2 heroism. The real reason you want to play this card is so that it does generate that heroism, because we can start using those heroic cards on Spider-Man. What's better is the fact that it gains 1 fast. Fast will lower the cost of your heroic cards. So our heroic cards being up here, Infernal Spider and Web Throw, they cost 2, 2, 3, and 3. Those will change to 1, 1, 2, and 2, which means our heroic cards actually cost next to nothing, and just playing this card alone almost affords us to play all of his heroics. Not to mention, we've been playing some quick kicks, which will definitely allow us to play all of our heroic cards. So just playing our quick kicks and our Spidey Sense, we will have generated enough heroism with fast to play all of our heroic abilities, and that is the reason I play Spider Sense here. The bonus is it's going to draw 2 cards, and they're 2 Spider-Man cards, allowing us to fish for the cards that we're looking for. Absolutely amazing. So I definitely recommend running 1 of these in your deck. You cannot mod this to be free, so +2 heroism is the best route. Next up is our Web Slinger. Now I can see a debate of some people saying it's not necessary to run this at all. I disagree, because that extra strengthened is nice for our heroic abilities. One thing to mention is increasing strength is not going to increase the attack damage of our quick kick, because it doesn't do damage, and it will not increase the damage of our environmental attacks, because those have a set damage base. And that is the reason why some people would make an argument that this card isn't adding a whole lot to Spider-Man. But with the heroics that I'm using, that extra strengthened is going to buff the damage of those by 50%, and I find value in that. But with the mod on here, it's draw last attack played. So when you draw this into your hand, it's a free card that's going to give him strength as a bonus, but it's also going to draw the last attack played, which was likely your quick kick, which generates even more cards. So even if you don't get value out of this card, it's still going to replace itself with another card that you last played. So I absolutely think if you mod it this way, it's worth it, absolutely. And if you happen to come across this again, you play it a second time, you're going to have strengthened for your next turn as well, and you will be able to then draw your quick kick yet again. So even drawing it multiple times, you're still going to get value out of it each and every time. Okay, let's get into the juicy stuff. What's really, really unique about what I've done here, and we'll see this with Up Here and Web Throw, you cannot apply to marked to AoE abilities. It just won't happen. You can get apply 1 mark to AoE abilities, but never 2 mark. What's really unique about Spider-Man's ability is they are AoE attacks as the secondary bonus effect. So Up Here will do 320 damage, apply 2 weak, and then it will do a bunch of damage to all nearby enemies. Hence why I said to upgrade his power to 25%, so we get a larger AoE radius. The mod, Apply to Marked, is only applicable to single target abilities. Up Here is considered to be a single target ability, and as a bonus, it then does AoE damage. What's really crazy is that effect of that AoE damage adopts the effect from whatever mod you put on this card. So if you add vulnerability or apply to marked, which we've done here, those nearby enemies will get marked. So this is actually one of the only AoE abilities in the entire game, other than his web throw, that can mark all enemies with 2 stacks of mark. Why is this important? Because if you don't end up making use out of those stacks of marks, on the next turn, the enemies are still marked. There are a lot of situations where I've played around with AoE abilities that applied 1 mark, ran out of card plays, the mark decayed, and it was a waste. And I end up finding that most AoE abilities benefit from increased damage by 50%, adding vulnerability, or other mods. But in this case, we are able to apply 2 mark to a whole group of enemies, and that makes it definitely worth it in terms of using a card play, and it will also weaken them. So whatever enemies are remaining that actually will get a chance to do some damage, they'll do 50% less damage. So, I mean, this turns him into a complete support, but up here is also doing a large amount of damage to the enemy that he's targeting. 312 is nothing to scoff at, and once we strengthened him with our web slinger, that becomes 450. But it gets better. It gets better. We're gonna look at his legendary ability, Infernal Spider. Absolutely amazing. The next 3 Spider-Man cards are free. Draw a Spider-Man card. The mod I've put on this is +2 redraws because there's really not a lot you can get on this. The redraws are nice to cycle out your other hero's abilities in hopes to find another Spider-Man ability, which is just great. You could just, you know, redraws are awesome. So that's the route I went with on this, and I find I get a lot of value out of it. So why is this important that the next 3 Spider-Man cards are free? Because now when we play up here, we get to mark all targets for 2 stacks of mark for free. This effectively makes him as good as Wanda once he's played his Infernal Spider. So now you've marked all the enemies for free. You could go jump up here into another group of enemies and mark those as well. And then then you could play your Spider Sense for free, drawing more cards and gaining fast ed resist and building a bunch of heroism. And once your effect runs out on this, where the next card is no longer free and it costs you something, all the enemies are marked and you've replenished your hand. Now you could use up here or quick kick or anything that will actually kill those marked enemies, and you will get the card play refunded because they're marked. So now all of a sudden all of his abilities are turning into damage dealer abilities, and they're being refunded because we've marked them all, which is just insane. And last but not least, we have our web throw, forceful knockback in any direction, and nearby enemies take 150 damage, and we've applied it to also do 2 mark. So this as well will mark a massive circle of enemies with 2 mark. The forceful knockback is such a large knockback that we can basically throw an enemy anywhere on the map, which means we can likely throw them into an ally to generate a card, or we can throw them into a generator to stun them using this on like a villain or something, and then all those nearby enemies are going to get marked. The one downside to web throw, I have to put this out there, when he spins that enemy around, he destroys all the destructibles in the area. He just destroys them. So if you planned on making use of those destructibles, you should do it before playing this. Make sure you clear out the destructibles with your opportunist ability. Try to get as much value out of those environmentals before using this, because it will go ahead and destroy all of those things in that area. And for that reason, it's why I use one of these instead of 2 of them, and I prefer using 2 up here's. Also, up here is cheaper in heroism cost, and once we've played Spider Sense, this will only cost 1/1, whereas web throw will cost 2. Web throw also doesn't innately do damage. You can see it says 0 damage in the top left corner, whereas up here does 300 damage, and with strengthened 450. So up here is much stronger of a single target damage than web throw. However, the AoE from web throw is a lot larger. But the forceful knockback's definitely nice because we can definitely get a card draw out of it. So now with Infernal Spider, we play that, and we can play our up here's, we can play our web throw, and we can mark all the enemies on the map, and now we can start to draw more of those Spider-Man cards with our Spider Sense, our Quick Kick, generating more up here abilities, and then we can use those to finish off the enemies to refund our card play. And now Spider-Man is a damage dealing maniac. Not to mention he's running around the map using all the environmentals with his opportunist ability to just kill the enemies right there, or at least soften them up so that when we do use our ability, we can kill them off entirely and get the card play refunded. And that is how I achieved Spider-Man to be a mark target support hero. And in the worst case scenario that you don't draw Infernal Spider, or you've gotten all the use out of Infernal Spider and you're on a wave-based mission where you have multiple turns to survive and you won't have a second Infernal Spider to play, even playing up here for one card play to mark all enemies in an area for one card play cost is still tremendously good value. And then you can go ahead and kill all those enemies with Spider-Man or your allies and get those card plays refunded, making up for the cost of the initial up here play. So I still think even if you're playing a card play for this, the value is still really, really good. I mean, if you're going to play Blade, he has to play Make 'em Bleed to then generate marks. Wanda without mods, she was marking for one card play cost, and a lot of the characters generally had to play a card to mark enemies, so that makes him no different than those characters once were before mods. So I digress. I do think the other characters are more efficient than Spider-Man at marking, but this gives you more options and more team compositions where you're less dependent on a Wanda, Iron Man, Blade type hero, and now you get to get more use and play out of Spider-Man. Not to mention the fact that he's still using his opportunist and making use of those environmental attacks, letting you do a lot more in your turn. All that extra environmental attacks, all those extra environmental damages that you're doing are essentially like free card plays. And I think that makes up for the fact that he has to use a card play to mark enemies. He's already doing so much in a turn that I think you can afford a card play here and there. But our Infernal Spider makes it free, and that just turns Spider-Man in. It gives him some really godly turns, as you can see from some of my footage that I've been playing in the background. He's insane. He's absolutely insane. And I gotta say, before this build here, I was struggling moving different pieces in and out, different cards in and out, and I was kind of struggling to get Spider-Man in an area where I felt like it just flowed. I got that flow state out of him. When I did this, all the pieces came together, and every mission I bring him on, I'm like, yes, 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 this is working, this is working. And this concept here with the marking, it definitely paid off, and I feel like this is the Spider-Man build of all Spider-Man builds, 100%. But why don't we head over to the Forge here and talk about Spider-Man's other abilities. So first up is Chain Strike. Once it's upgraded, it will change from 2 targets to 4 targets. If the target will be KO'd, chain to another target. This is a really cool card early on when you're playing the early game and you're leveling up and all that. You can, hit one minion, another minion, another minion, and another minion, and you can clear 4 minions all with one card, and it feels really cool. It's a super fun feeling ability, but it's not ideal because generally you want to use those minions as a resource to generate more cards by knocking them into allies and generating cards and that sort of thing. Oftentimes minions are a resource, and this is just going to clear them all out, effectively deleting all of your resources. So this is a super inefficient card. Regardless of how fun it is, it's probably not a good idea to run it. In the case that you're absolutely married to that card, my mod recommendation for that card, which I've done here, you can see it here, chain +1 heroism for each KO, and with Hunter on your team doubling heroism, this is going to be +2 heroism for each KO plus the 2 that the card would give you, meaning you can get full heroism off this card. Then it starts to look worth it. If you could hit 1, 2, 3 enemies, fill up all your heroism, sure, that's the route you would want to go with it. Thwip is the next one, and upgraded, this will make it so environmental attacks against the enemy will do 50% increased damage damage, but the main effect of this card is the fact that it binds enemies. Binding an enemy means they lose their turn. They can't move, they can't do anything. It also means you can't knock them back anymore. And that's the reason I don't like running this card, because I like to knock them into things. I like to move them around. Spider-Man has so many moves, so many knockbacks, so much mobility, so many, yeah, you want to be able to have that freedom to manipulate the battlefield and the enemies within it. And once you bind them, you remove the ability to do that. It is great when you've killed a bunch of enemies, there's still one big guy left over or a villain left over. Spider-Man can just bind them and you get tremendous value out of this. I highly recommend using this card in the early to mid game as you're leveling up, but as you can see from my footage and my current build, there's no need to use a bind when everything is dead. So later on, when he becomes just insanely powerful, you won't need this, but I do recommend running 2 of these in your deck in the early game, because they will save you in many cases. So it's a great card. No qualms against this one. Special delivery we did not look at. Upgraded, this gives you extra moves on KO, which is definitely great. We want those extra moves on Spider-Man. It is also a forceful knockback, and what's unique about this, it's the only forceful knockback in the game that pulls towards a character. So you could yoink someone from halfway across the map into Spider-Man, and if you mod this to be quick, you'll get the card play refunded, which is also cool. However, this doesn't do damage innately. There's no damage on this card. The only damage will be the knockback effect into Spider-Man, which is based off his offense, so you'll only do about 150 damage to the enemy. It's not enough to make it worth it in terms of killing big guys, when you could just use his quick attack, his quick kick, and once modded to draw a card, suddenly this card is now generating cards, whereas special delivery will never have an opportunity to draw cards because you'll need to mod this to be quick. So for me, it's a really cool card in the sense that it pulls them towards him. It goes really well with the theme of Spider-Man. There's just something missing here that reduces its value. I think this is something the developers should go back and look at and put an extra effect on there, like it draws a card or something. Then it would be a cool card and debatably worth it to use over Quick Kick. And we pretty much looked at everything else here. So there's a look at all of his other abilities that we didn't see. And next up, one of the things I do in this series is talk about who they pair well with. As you can see from a lot of the footage that I've been using, I've been pairing Spider-Man with Doctor Strange. And that is because I can use more battle items and then have Doctor Strange replenish those battle items. And those battle items take Spider-Man to a whole new level. And we'll talk about those in just a second. But because Spider-Man is now a Mark support hero, you can pair him with anybody. I've paired him with Captain Marvel, Captain America, Hulk, anybody that's a damage dealer. Ghost Rider, because Spider-Man can effectively mark enemies and do it well, anyone in the game is going to go well with him because they can knock out those marked enemies, refunding the card plays, which makes Spider-Man one of the most versatile heroes in the game, because not only does he excel really well with Doctor Strange, who is another support hero, Spider-Man is effectively a support hero as well, and that means any damage dealer is going to love pairing with Spider-Man. And if you change the mods and make it so he's not a Mark hero, he will also pair well with the other Mark heroes like Scarlet Witch, Iron Man, and Blade. I'd say Spider-Man is one of those heroes in the game where no matter who you pair him with, he's going to excel, making him super easy to level up, super friendly to level up, because he is the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. So he's great, but my personal favorite pairing with him is Doctor Strange, 100%. So speaking of Strange, one of the things I like to do is review the battle items I recommend for a particular hero. When paired with Doctor Strange, what you could do with Spider-Man is give him the Major Strength Tonic. This is a very expensive one to make. You have to make it at the Cauldron. It uses a lot of your Abbey reagents. Select one hero, they gain 1 overpowered. 1 overpowered increases your character's damage by 100%, and it stacks multiplicatively with strength. So once he has used his web slinger ability to get 50% more strength, now you're using a strength tonic on him and he's doing 150% more damage, meaning those big heavy hitters that we looked at that do 300 damage, they're doing nearly 1,000 damage now. That's definitely going to put Spider-Man in contention with knocking out those marked enemies and making him super self-sufficient. And now we can use Doctor Strange to bring back our Major Strength Tonic, and we'll likely likely come across Astral Meditation to refund this because Spider-Man is helping with the card draw assistance. If you want to take it one step further, you can also give Spider-Man the Fury Totem. This also needs to be crafted at the Cauldron. Draw a card every time they KO an enemy for 2 turns. So that's allowing Spider-Man to draw even more cards with his quick attack and even his AoE abilities that are killing enemies. Really going to be filling up your hand quite quickly, but it's also a little overkill. I tend to just bring the draw 4 cards or a utility belt, which allows me to draw 2 Spider-Man cards to get things going. You won't need as much heroism on Spider-Man because he has that fast. The heroism on his cards don't cost that much, but if you do feel like you need it, you can always bring an overdrive serum, but it's definitely not that necessary. But Spider-Man does so well all on his own. Like I said, you don't have to pair him with Strange. He's going to pair well with anybody. So in that case, it's just good to bring the battlefield scanners and the utility belts to get those card draws going for your team and let Spider-Man go on his little marathon of destroying everything on the battlefield. Boom. So there it is, ladies and gentlemen. That is my unique build for Spider-Man. What did you think? Do you like it? Do you do something different than Spider-Man that I didn't think of? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop them down in the comments below. If you guys found this video helpful or informative in any way, please do give it a like, share it with your friends on social media, try to help me get some more views on this series. Be sure to check the links in the description of the video. I have a whole series for this hero guides as well as a video for how to mod your heroes the way I did with relative ease through my modding guide. I think you'll find that extremely helpful as well. So that's going to do it for Spider-Man Hero Guide in today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm Johnny5Alive, and I'll see you all in the next Midnight Sun video. Bye now.